Whether you're working in content creation or software development in a team or on your own, I think it's always good to have a process to review and reflect on the way that you work. Without having a regular check-in, you may never have the opportunity to just sort of bounce ideas around about how you could work better or communicate better, and this can result in a ton of productivity being left at the door. Hey, I'm Tom, I'm a product manager working in London, and I make videos on how to use tools to make you more productive. So if that's something you're interested in, press subscribe and you'll be notified when I release new weekly videos. So I've been working in the process that we call Scrum for a while with my software development team. One of the key things about Scrum is this idea of a weekly or bi-weekly retrospective. And this is a really fancy name, but there's nothing too complicated about it. All a retrospective is looking back over the past week or 2 weeks of work and trying to facilitate a conversation about how that work went, things that went well, things that didn't go well, and then trying as a team to come together and propose different actions so that in the future you can work better together. And I found that by doing this every couple of weeks, just very, very small positive incremental changes happen, which over time can just result in huge productivity gains for yourself and your team. So in this video, we're going to be going through my process for performing these weekly retrospectives using a tool that I absolutely love called Whimsical. I actually perform these retros for my own personal projects as well as with my team. So regardless of whether you work in a team or you just got your own project that you're working on, I think you're going to find this process pretty helpful. I'll leave the timestamps here, so if you want to jump around, you can. Let's get into it. So first, let's talk about who should implement a retrospective into the way that they work. For me, if you're working in a team, I think it's just so beneficial to do something like this, especially as we're working more remotely. Regardless of whether you work in software development or something completely different, now with everything being on Zoom and no face-to-face interaction, I think having this formal process where you can say, right, here's an hour where every 2 weeks we get together and we discuss problems that we found while working and generate potential solutions. It's just going to be a really healthy part of the way that you work. Also, I think if you're working on your own, it can also be a pretty good exercise to do. Through creating these YouTube videos and other content that I'm now putting out online, I've found that just taking the time, maybe a short amount of time, just half an hour every week, to review what's gone right, what's gone wrong, and try and improve my process, it's just something that's really helpful. So now let's get into the meat of it really, which is the process that I use to perform these weekly retros. I should say there's no real formula for how this should work. You've just got to find something that works for you, try adjusting things. This is just something that's worked for me, and I think if you use this as a base, it's going to be a good start, and then you can just tweak it as you go along to find something that works a bit better for you. So this is the template, and as you can see, it's pretty structured where you've got sort of 3 or 4 main talking points. And the first way that I always like to start a retrospective is things that could have gone better in the week or 2 weeks that have just gone. And I find that just time boxing this to say 5 or 10 minutes and letting people put their ideas down is just a really great way to start facilitating the conversation about what you can improve on. The idea here is to really just capture as many ideas as possible and let your whole team just write down whatever it might be that they are struggling with at the moment. There's sometimes a tendency, like a natural human tendency, to start thinking about people and like specific problems. For example, oh, Sarah didn't do the QA properly this week, so that ended up meaning that we released something that was not of great quality. Try and guide the conversation towards more something around like, this is something that's wrong with the process. So we didn't have enough time to QA this week, which meant that we ended up releasing something that we weren't happy with. So yeah, something that you might want to influence your team or when you're thinking about yourself, to just try and focus on the process rather than any specific person that comes up. Otherwise, this could get into a bit of a tit-for-tat discussion that you don't really want. Once you've got all these ideas captured, you're then just going to want to let everyone blow off some steam by talking about the issues that they've put forward. This should just be a couple of minutes each, and it's going to give everyone in the team a bit of an insight into what's going on. The next step is, I think, a really important one, because you're going to have so many different problems here, and unless you want to spend all week addressing them all, you really want to start narrowing these down into the most important ones. So then what I tend to do here is give everyone 2 stickies, which you can easily create in Whimsical, and have everyone vote on the problems that they think are the biggest ones that should be addressed. So they could put 2 votes to just one problem, or they could put 1 in each. And after this exercise, it's going to be pretty clear which are the big problems that you want to be addressing. So now you just want to take the sort of top issues that have been highlighted. You're probably going to find that some of the issues raised have no votes and a handful of them have the majority. So just pull those into the discussion points section. Now's the fun bit. You get to actually stop talking and start problem solving. And I think it's really just great here if you can just facilitate quite a free-flowing discussion where people can put forward any ideas that they think are going to solve any of these issues that you've raised in the discussion points. I try to keep these ideas ideally to something that can be solved by the next retro. Often this isn't going to be possible, but for example, if you find that one of the biggest issues is, well, we took on too much work this week, which meant our quality wasn't as good as it usually is. Perhaps rather than putting in a task which would be, or an action that would be, we need to hire somebody, which is obviously going to be a long drawn out process, maybe just something simple like, well, let's try and commit to 30% less work next week, and then we can always pull stuff in if it needs to be done. I find that this is just a really helpful way to think about things, because otherwise you might end up suggesting things that just never get done. So think small, but over time these small improvements are really going to lead to a bigger change. You're probably now going to have quite a few different actions that could be taken to solve the problems that have arisen in your retrospective. And again, I think one of the dangers here is if you've got, say, 10 different actions and they all look really good, is to say, right, we're going to do all of these for next week and it's going to be great. In my experience, handling it this way means that probably none of these actions are going to get done, or they're going to be done in a half-assed way. What you're probably going to find more beneficial is to just pick one or two of these different actions and make sure that one person is responsible for actually carrying those through. That way the team isn't overwhelmed on optimizing and they can focus on delivering the actual work that needs to be done. But every now and then one of the team members might be held responsible for actually delivering something which is hopefully going to improve the process. I like to use the stickies again so everyone can vote on the actions that they think are going to be most valuable to follow up on, and then just take the top one or two and make sure that somebody is assigned in the team to actually ensure that those actions are delivered by the next retrospective. Now you've gone through the process of identifying the problems, shortlisting them, coming up with the actions, and then you've got one or two which you're going to carry into the next retro. The next step is really just a way to finish the retrospective on a high and to encourage a bit of camaraderie, I suppose, between the team, or if you're doing this by yourself, just to give yourself a bit of a motivational push. Sometimes I do find that retrospectives can be quite challenging because you're focusing in on the negatives of what's gone wrong in the week, because obviously you want to focus on the negatives a lot because that's ultimately going to feed into a better system. But if you just focus on the negatives and never on the positives, it's obviously not going to be a nice environment to work in. So just finishing off with this proud or thanks is a really great way to recognise achievements that have been done by people in the team or things that you might have done that you're proud of. And it's very simple. All you do here is you ask everyone in the team to say, what's one thing that you're either proud of that you've done over the last week or two, or what's one thing that you're thankful for another teammate. And often this can be a really great conversation to have, because somebody might say something like, well, you know, Dan helped me out last week even though he was overwhelmed with stuff, and I really am glad that he took the time to do that. These might be things that otherwise would have been left unsaid. So just a really nice element, I think, to finish the retrospective on. I will say that often, especially this proud or thanks part of the retro can feel quite awkward and forced, because it is forced. I mean, you're telling somebody like you have to write down like one thing that you're proud or thankful for. But over time it will start to feel more natural, it'll just become part of the process. So if it does feel a bit awkward for that first one or two sessions, don't worry about it. Trust me, over time it will ebb out and it will just feel very natural. So there you have it, a very simple retrospective that you can use by yourself or with your team to hopefully improve the process of how you work over time. If you found that video helpful, I'm going to leave a playlist here which is going to have a ton of other guides like for Notion and Whimsical that you can use to be more productive. And also, of course, share this with somebody if you think it was helpful, and press subscribe. And if you have any thoughts about how you think this process could be better, I'd really love to hear about them in the comments. I'm always looking to learn. And thanks a lot and have a great day.